Have you ever stood in a room full of people speaking a language you couldn't understand? They laugh, they talk, they live freely. And you? You just sit in silence, smiling, nodding, pretending. But inside, it feels like you don't belong. That was me, once. I was afraid of English, afraid of sounding foolish, afraid of making mistakes, afraid of being laughed at. But today, English is my habit, my friend, my voice. And if I can get here, so can you. This is not a tutorial, this is a story. My story, and maybe yours too. I remember my first English class. The teacher wrote the word apple on the board. My heart raced. I stood up to pronounce it. Apila, I said. Everyone laughed. That sound echoed in my head for weeks. I went home, closed my door, and cried under the blanket. But something inside me refused to break. Something whispered, "You can get better. You just have to begin." The next morning, I woke up early and switched on the old radio in the living room. I found an English channel. I didn't understand a word, but I sat there, listening to sounds that felt like puzzles. I didn't give up. Every day I listened, same time, same station. Slowly, I started recognizing words, then phrases, and one day I heard the word hope. That day, I didn't just understand the word, I felt it. That was the first time English didn't feel like a mountain. It felt like a path. So I took my next step. I decided I would speak English even if it was broken. I would speak to the mirror, to the trees, to the air. I named everything around me in English. Table, fan, sky, shadow. I knew I would make mistakes, and I did, but I kept speaking, because silence had kept me stuck for too long. I had to break out of it. I had to speak, even if my voice trembled. One evening, while walking back from school, I passed by a tiny bookstall. On the edge of the table was a small children's book with a picture of a cat. The title read, "The Lost Cat." I picked it up and paid for it with coins I had saved. That night, I opened the first page. The cat was alone. That one sentence touched me. I was alone, too, in this language. But as I read the story, something shifted. With every sentence, I found comfort, simplicity. I wasn't just learning English, I was connecting with it. I read that book a dozen times, and each time it felt like coming home. I began writing in a small notebook. Nothing fancy, just a few sentences about my day. I woke up. I saw the sun. My teacher smiled at me. Simple, yes, but honest. And with time, my sentences grew. They had life, emotion, color. Writing helped me put my world into words. It gave me space to breathe. Cartoons became my best friends. I'd wake up early to watch them. The funny voices, the silly characters, I laughed, I learned, I listened. Later, I started watching English movies. At first, I needed subtitles. Then I didn't. I started catching jokes, emotions, sarcasm. I was no longer just watching. I was understanding. Then something beautiful happened. I met someone online who was also learning English, a girl from Kenya. "Hi, want to practice together?" she asked. And we did. Every night, we spoke in broken sentences. We laughed at our mistakes. We corrected each other gently. And in that fragile friendship, something strong grew, confidence. There were hard days, days when I wanted to give up, days when I felt stupid. Everyone else seemed to be improving faster, but I reminded myself, this is not a race. It's a journey, and every small step I take matters. I learned to be patient with myself. I started carrying a tiny dictionary in my pocket. Every time I heard a new word, I would look it up. What does it mean? How do you pronounce it? Can I use it in a sentence? That dictionary became my secret weapon. Every word I added felt like adding color to my once black and white world. I made English fun. I played word games with friends. We challenged each other to find the most words starting with one letter. It was a game, but it was also growth. I found that when I laughed while learning, I remembered more. That's the trick. Make it fun. Soon, I stopped translating everything in my head. I began thinking in English, not perfectly, but naturally. I looked at the sky and thought, it's beautiful today, not Aaj Asman Sundar Hai. Just, it's beautiful. That shift was everything. And then something small, but powerful. I set a goal, just one. Learn 5 new words today. That was it. And I did. Every day. Slowly, my vocabulary grew. My sentences got stronger. I felt proud. I started setting bigger goals. Read a whole book. Write a story. Have a 10-minute conversation. Every time I reached one, I celebrated. Not with parties, but with a smile, a piece of chocolate, a quiet moment of pride. I began reviewing what I learned. I'd read my old journal entries and think, wow, I wrote that? I saw my progress in ink. I saw my strength on paper. It made me want to keep going. I surrounded myself with English. I changed the language on my phone. I stuck sticky notes on furniture. Chair, mirror, window. I started thinking in English while cooking, cleaning, walking. English was no longer a subject. It became part of my life. I repeated words aloud every morning. Confidence, strength, kindness. Over and over until they became part of me. I made up silly songs with new words. I laughed at my own grammar mistakes. I found joy in the awkwardness. Whenever I learned a new word, I used it right away. I said, this flower is beautiful. Then I said, this view is beautiful. Then, this moment is beautiful. The more I used it, the more it stayed. I slowed down. I stopped rushing. I told myself, even one word today is progress. And it was. I realized I didn't need to learn everything today. I just needed to not quit today. I started keeping a journal. I wrote about my fears, my dreams, my first joke in English, my first compliment, my first mistake that made someone laugh with me, not at me. That journal became my memory palace, full of triumphs. I asked questions without shame. What does this mean? Can you say that again? Did I pronounce it right? I learned that asking isn't weakness, it's courage. I took breaks. I let myself breathe. On days I felt tired, I rested. I watched a movie, listened to music, painted. Then I returned, fresh, energized, ready. And slowly, almost magically, I started to love the process. One of the most powerful things I did was celebrate my progress, not just the big achievements, even the smallest ones. When I learned a new word, I smiled. When I finished a paragraph without checking the dictionary, I gave myself a high five in the mirror. One time, I finished a whole page of writing without stopping, and I danced in my room like I'd won a medal. Because to me, I had. These little celebrations kept me going. They reminded me that learning is not about perfection. It's about moving forward, even a single step at a time. Then I started learning with others. I found a friend in my neighborhood who was also trying to learn English. We met every Saturday at the park. We brought snacks, a notebook, and a lot of laughter. We practiced dialogues, corrected each other's sentences, and told silly stories. Learning with someone else didn't just make it easier, it made it joyful. When one of us struggled, the other encouraged. When one of us improved, the other clapped. We weren't alone anymore. I also started listening to myself, literally. I would record my voice while reading stories or talking about my day. At first, I hated it. I thought, do I really sound like that? But over time, those recordings became my mirror. I could hear where I improved and where I needed work. I noticed my pronunciation getting clearer, my tone more confident. The voice I once cringed at started to sound like someone I was proud of. I learned not to compare myself to others. There were classmates who seemed to learn faster, speak more fluently, use big words. At first, I felt small, but then I reminded myself, I'm not them. I'm me. And I'm learning in my own way at my own pace. My journey may be slower, but it's mine. And every step I take is real, honest, and earned. I stopped watching others and started focusing on my growth. That changed everything. I let myself be creative. When I learned a new word, I drew it. When I struggled to remember a phrase, I made up a funny poem. I used colors, sketches, songs, anything to make learning stick. Once, I wrote a short comic strip using only 5 English words. It made no sense, but I never forgot those words again. Learning became my art. To stay focused, I started getting organized. I created a folder for my notes, a separate notebook for vocabulary, and a chart to track my daily practice. Every night, I ticked the box after completing my goal, even if it was just 10 minutes of reading. That small tick mark gave me satisfaction, a sense of structure, a feeling that I was building something brick by brick. I made consistency my secret weapon. I didn't need to study for hours every day. Sometimes I only had 15 minutes, but I never skipped, not even once. I turned learning into a habit, like brushing my teeth, like eating breakfast. It became a part of who I was. But I also learned to be kind to myself. On the days I felt stuck, I didn't say, I'm bad at English. I said, today is hard, but tomorrow will be better. I replaced self-criticism with compassion. I reminded myself, you're trying, you're growing, you're doing great. That voice, that kind, forgiving voice, became my inner coach. One of the most effective tools I used was flashcards. I made them from old cardboard and colorful pens. On one side, I wrote the English word. On the other, the meaning or a picture. I carried them everywhere, in my bag, my pocket, my lunchbox, whenever I had a free moment, on the bus, in line during breaks, I reviewed them. Those tiny cards held entire worlds inside them. Then, I decided to fully immerse myself in English. I stopped thinking of it as just a subject. I made it my environment. I changed the language on my phone. I started talking to myself in English. In the shower, while cooking, even before sleeping. English became the background music of my life. The more I used it, the more natural it felt. It stopped being foreign. It started becoming mine. I stayed curious like a child. Every new word was a mystery I wanted to solve. I didn't just want to know what it meant. I wanted to know where it came from, how it was used, how it felt in my mouth when I said it out loud. I turned learning into an adventure. I made it exciting. I reviewed my goals regularly. Every month, I looked at what I'd achieved and asked myself, what's next? Sometimes I made the goals bigger. Write a short story, watch a movie without subtitles. Sometimes I made them smaller. Learn 5 idioms. Practice pronunciation for 10 minutes. Adjusting my goals kept me moving forward without pressure. Online resources became my second classroom. I watched YouTube videos that explained grammar in simple ways. I took quizzes on websites. I used free apps to learn vocabulary through games. Some days I learned more from a 5-minute video than from an hour-long lesson. Technology became my teacher, and it never got tired. I also explored English culture, not just the language, but the stories behind it. I learned about traditions, holidays, how people greet each other, how they joke. Understanding the culture made the language come alive. It wasn't just words, it was a world. I kept my motivation alive with small rewards. After finishing a book, I treated myself to my favorite dessert. After recording a full story, I watched a fun video. These little joys turned my learning into a celebration. I started associating English not with stress, but with happiness. And through it all, I remembered to be patient. Deeply, truly patient. Because some days felt slow, some words felt impossible. Some accents were confusing. But I reminded myself, even a mountain is climbed one step at a time. And I was climbing every single day. I made it a habit to listen to different English accents. British, American, Australian. I realized that English doesn't sound the same everywhere, and that's okay. I learned to understand people even when their pronunciation was different. My ears got stronger, my listening sharper. Whenever I had the chance, I used English in real-life situations. I greeted tourists in English. I ordered food using English phrases. I helped a lost stranger by giving directions, shaking inside but smiling outside. Those moments were scary, but unforgettable. Real-world practice was the best teacher I ever had. I remained open to learning new things. Language changes. New words come in. Old rules evolve. I embraced that. I let myself grow with the language. I didn't hold on to what I learned yesterday. I welcomed what I could learn today. And every time I learned a new word, I made my own sentences. I played with it, twisted it, laughed with it. A new word wasn't just something to memorize. It was a new toy, a tool, a friend. English TV shows became a window into everyday language. I watched people talk casually, joke, argue, laugh. I started understanding slang, tone, pauses. I stopped watching just to watch. I watched to learn. I tried new things without fear. I listened to podcasts. I wrote poems. I even acted out scenes from my favorite shows. I experimented. And with every new experience, I added another brick to my language home. I learned to focus on one thing at a time. One day for vocabulary, another for listening, another for speaking. I didn't overwhelm myself. I just showed up every day with intention. And most importantly, I connected everything I learned to my life. If I learned the word sunny, I'd step outside and say, "What a sunny day." If I learned delicious, I used it at dinner. The more personal the learning, the deeper it stayed with me. Confidence didn't come overnight. It came slowly, quietly, with every sentence I spoke without fear, with every conversation I finished, with every compliment I received. I believed in myself, even when I didn't feel ready. And that belief carried me forward. I found joy in the tiniest wins, a compliment from a stranger, understanding a joke in English, dreaming in English for the first time. These little moments were gold. I collected them. I cherished them. I started listening to English radio. Not because I understood it all. I didn't. Not in the beginning. But because I wanted my ears to get used to the rhythm, the speed, the music of the language. At first, it was noise, fast and confusing. But then I began to catch familiar words. Weather, traffic, morning. The words became anchors. Each day I understood a little more. And one morning, while tying my shoes, I realized I was nodding along to the news, not because I was pretending, but because I actually understood. That small moment felt like magic. I began to think of learning English as an adventure, like exploring a new world. Every word I learned was a treasure. Every sentence I spoke was a path I walked. I wasn't just studying anymore, I was discovering. Some days felt like climbing a mountain, some like walking through a garden. But every day was a journey, and I began to love the walk. I used learning apps too. Some had games, some had grammar lessons, some had daily challenges. I didn't treat them like schoolwork. I treated them like playtime. Some days I'd compete with myself. Can I beat yesterday's score? Can I spell that word faster today? These apps turned my phone from a distraction into a tool for growth. I used my screen not to scroll, but to soar. And when I felt tired, I took breaks, real breaks. I stepped away from notebooks and apps. I went for walks. I listened to music. I sat with friends. I let my brain rest so it could return stronger. There's no shame in pausing. In fact, it's necessary. Breaks gave me balance. They reminded me that learning is not a punishment, it's a gift. Visual aids helped me too. Pictures, charts, flashcards. If I saw the word tree next to an image of a tree, it stuck. My brain connected the sound, the spelling, and the meaning all at once. I started drawing little sketches in my notebooks. Not because I was good at drawing, I wasn't, but because it helped me remember. Even a silly stick figure helped turn confusion into clarity. Sometimes I had to start over. Go back to basics. Review things I thought I already knew. And that was okay. Starting over doesn't mean failing. It means building a stronger foundation. I realized that going back was sometimes the best way to move forward. I also set rewards for myself. Small, personal rewards. After finishing a writing exercise, I allowed myself to watch an episode of my favorite show. After reaching a new vocabulary milestone, I bought myself a treat. These rewards weren't big, but they made the hard work feel joyful. They turned progress into celebration. And through it all, I stayed curious. That was my secret fuel. I wanted to know more, not because I had to, but because I wanted to. I found joy in asking questions, in learning how things worked, in understanding why people said things a certain way. Curiosity made learning exciting. It made English come alive. Podcasts became part of my routine. I listened to them while doing chores, during walks, even before sleeping. I chose topics I liked, stories, history, motivation. The more I listened, the more I learned. I didn't understand every word, but that didn't stop me. Slowly, the fog lifted, and the meanings became clearer. Those voices in my ears became my invisible teachers. I used English in every way I could. I didn't wait for the perfect time or the perfect sentence. I just used what I knew. I spoke, I wrote, I read, I listened. I immersed myself in the language like a swimmer jumping into water. The more I used it, the more fluent I became, not perfect, but real. Taking notes became a habit, not just in class, but in life. If I heard a new phrase, I wrote it down. If I saw a word I didn't know, I jotted it in my notebook. My notes became like footprints showing how far I'd come. And whenever I felt stuck, I'd look back through those pages and remember, I've learned so much already. And then something unexpected happened. One evening, as I was reading out loud, I paused. I realized I wasn't translating in my head. I wasn't struggling to pronounce each word. I was just reading, naturally, like breathing. That night, I looked in the mirror and smiled. I whispered to myself, "You're doing it. You're really doing it." Learning English became more than just learning a language. It became a way of understanding people, a way of expressing myself, a way of connecting with the world. I could watch international films, read books I once couldn't understand, talk to people from countries I'd never visited. It felt like I'd been given wings. But even then, I never stopped learning. I still make mistakes. I still discover new words. I still laugh at myself sometimes. But now, I laugh with joy, not embarrassment, because I know I'm still growing, and growth is beautiful. So if you're listening to this and you've ever felt too shy to speak, too scared to try, too old to learn, I want you to know something. You can do it. You absolutely can. Not in one day, not in one week, but step by step, word by word, sentence by sentence, with patience, with consistency, and with love. English will become your habit too. I began to notice something I never expected. English wasn't just helping me speak to the world, it was helping me understand myself. The words I once feared became the same words I used to express my dreams, my worries, my heart. I no longer said, "I'm bad at English." I started saying, "I'm learning." I no longer avoided conversations, I looked for them. I no longer felt small in a room full of voices. I had found mine. I had built it, one sentence at a time. And then one day, something beautiful happened. I was walking through the market when a tourist looked around, confused. He approached and asked, "Excuse me, can you tell me where the post office is?" Without thinking, I replied, "Yes, go straight and take the second left." He smiled. "Your English is good." I smiled back. "Thank you." But inside, my heart was dancing. Not because he said my English was good, but because I didn't hesitate. I didn't translate. I didn't panic. I simply spoke. That moment may have lasted only 10 seconds, but to me, it was proof. Proof that everything I'd done, every mistake, every notebook, every moment of self-doubt, it all mattered. From that day on, I started helping others. I shared my story, my tips, my favorite tools. I told people that it's okay to start late. It's okay to be slow. It's okay to sound funny at first, because all that matters is starting. I saw the same fear in their eyes that I once had, and I told them what I wish someone had told me back then. You are not behind. You are not too old. You are not too weak. You are just beginning, and beginnings are powerful. I told them to enjoy the journey, not to wait until they were fluent to be proud. Be proud of every little word you learn. Be proud when you understand a sign, when you write your first sentence, when you sing your first song in English. Because those are the victories that no one sees, but you'll never forget. I told them to make English part of their world. Change the songs they listen to. Change the language on their phones. Watch English videos, even if they only understand half. Read signs on the road. Whisper to themselves in English while doing laundry. Make it a part of life, not just a task. Let English live in their daily routine, in small, quiet, personal ways. And I told them never to be afraid of mistakes, because mistakes are not the enemy. They are proof that you are doing something brave. I still remember the time I said kitchen instead of chicken at a restaurant. The waiter laughed kindly, and so did I. We shared a moment, not of shame, but of learning. That's how it works. You learn, you try, you grow. And now, years later, I look back and realize English didn't just give me vocabulary, it gave me freedom. The freedom to connect, the freedom to dream bigger, the freedom to travel, to write, to speak, to belong. It gave me confidence not just in language, but in myself. The kind that says, you can figure things out, you are strong, you are capable. Even now I continue learning. Because learning never stops. There's always a new word, a new phrase, a new way to say something. But now, I'm not chasing fluency, I'm dancing with the language, playing with it, enjoying it. English is not my subject anymore. It's my habit, my daily companion, my mirror, my window to the world. And if you're still on your way, starting out, struggling, doubting, let me say this clearly. You are not alone. Your fear is normal. Your hesitation is valid. But your dream to speak, to understand, to connect, that dream is possible. Completely possible. Whether you're learning in a classroom, from your phone, in your kitchen, or on your rooftop, it doesn't matter. What matters is that you show up, that you keep going. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to be persistent. A few minutes a day, a few new words a week, one conversation at a time. That's how habits are built. That's how mountains are climbed. One day, you'll surprise yourself. You'll write a message without using a translator. You'll laugh at a joke in a movie. You'll give someone directions in English. And in that moment, you'll know this language, this habit, this journey, it was worth it. So today, if no one has told you yet, I'm proud of you. I see how hard you're trying. I see how much you care. And I want you to keep going. Because someday soon, someone will ask you, how did you learn to speak so well?